the original Season 4, Episode 7, High Water and a Devil's Daughter. I actually enjoyed this episode. I was surprised with a lot of the stuff that they did. They actually ended up killing off officially, unless he comes back from an even more powerful spell, they officially kill off the witch from the last episode when he gets his head knocked off, so I think he's officially gone. We actually see somewhat of the physical representation of the Hollow, which we find out is actually an ancestor of Haley and Hope, so I thought that was very cool. We get to see, which they flat out do it in the promo, but we get like a hint that there's more of Davina left on the other side, which was great. And then in the promo, she's just there talking with Haley and Klaus, so I assume that they go over to the other side, because the scenes that they were in were like dark, they kind of were tinted with blue, and that's what they did in the last season, so I assume that they go to the other side and she doesn't actually end up being resurrected. But I thought it was cool. I was like, okay, well, they give hope that that's something that they certainly could do in the future if they want to. She wasn't like actually like completely disintegrated or whatever when she was sent over to the other side and stuff like that, so I was happy to see that that was the case. But that was a great reference to kind of bring her character back into the fold, at least a little bit. We'll see if they decide to kind of go full force with it, where she is allowed to officially come back to life. But I kind of doubt that'll be the case, but you never know. We'll see what they end up doing with that. But they did some good stuff, relationship-wise, with the characters. We have, of course, Haley and Klaus and Hope, as well as Marcel. They're all trapped inside of the house in this episode, and we get some pretty cool stuff. We have Hope in the beginning. She's reading through this old book of rhymes that used to belong to Marcel, and she's kind of talking with her dad just a little bit, and of course he's trying to hide all the crazy darkness, from their past, from his daughter. So I like the way that that was kind of played with in this episode, where he's like, why don't we go somewhere else? And she's kind of able to go around, do her own thing. That's how she ends up running into Marcel. And Klaus just feels trapped. And they bring up something early on in this episode with Haley that I thought was really good. When they're going back and forth and she's like, why are you yelling at me? Like, I'm on your side. Like, I don't want to be trapped here either, but we have this crazy, crazy power that we, can't really go up against. Plus all of its followers, which are all witches, which is a pretty big deal, going up against them. So I love the way it was kind of handled, where in the end, she's like, you're worried about Marcel. He's like, he can rot, he can suffer, like he didn't really give a crap. But they came full circle at the end, and I thought it was really well done, because we knew that there had to be some way for them to end up working together. I knew it was going to be the case, but I just wasn't sure how it was going to play out. And I actually like it playing out in this manner, where they're almost back to being in good graces. Of course, Klaus mentions that he's not going to let anything happen to Hope, but he also won't let anything happen to Marcel. When Marcel and Hope are talking, he's like, I really wish that I could hate your dad. You just end up hating yourself. You can't really hate the thing that made you what you are. And I just thought that was really good, especially, the second line where it's like, you can't hate what you've loved for so long. That was even an even better line than the first line he had. So I was like, this is very interesting, where we get this interesting depth to these characters, where, this big gap between this season and the last, it was just pure hatred. It was like, I own Klaus. I'll have him locked in my basement. I own the house again. I own the quarter. And it was such an interesting shift, things switching back, past, recent episodes, and them still having these feelings for each other, where they still care. Like, Marcel is still Klaus's son, and I was like, man, something about that was just really well done in this episode. So I really enjoyed that. Of course, we get a lot of development with Freya and Keelan in this episode, and by the end they are officially getting together. But they certainly played it up in a very good way, because they're getting closer and stuff. And then, much kind of like I mentioned, it worked out in this episode, but it was exactly what I mentioned from the very beginning. Like, okay, you fall for somebody, especially as a new character, you never know what's going to happen with the newer characters, but you end up falling for somebody, and then all this chaos comes along. Fortunately, Keelan is super badass, because she fought off I wish we got to see it, but she fought off 10 vampires or something insane like that. I thought for sure that Freya was going to have to let the guy go in order for her to survive, but that was certainly not the case, because she would have had to have taken care of all of them before the guy was able to escape and tell them, oh, leave her alone. She got attacked by 10 people. So she took all of them out, and I was like, that was super badass on her part. So I wish we got to see some of that, but she ends up holding her own. But she is kind of used as bait, in a sense, where this guy really never even bothered to remember his name. But, he's kind of taunting Freya. He knows that he's at the end of his line. She got the appeasing thing, and he's just screwed. It's like, well, I got no more information. But I do have my little, one final little trick up my sleeve, and it's of course that he had been basically following Freya and Keelan, and it's like, okay, I know how you feel about her, I know how you look at her from across the room, and he knew to send his people after her, which, as we saw, didn't really make much of a difference. She was super badass and killed everybody, but it had an effect on Freya, and I thought that was really well done. It was like, she does like her, she has feelings. It was, I think it's obvious that they've been taunting at that, or hinting at it. So she freaks out, and it basically, it nearly gets her killed because she freaks out and she's trying to get the answer out of him, and she blows him out of the circle. And I was like, well, that can't be good. And as soon as I was thinking that, of course, he ends up waking up, and now that he's not in the circle anymore, he's able to use his powers. He basically sends her into a cardiac arrest and stops her heart. And I guess the ninth ward is super, super close to Josh's place, but I don't know, because I was like, man, she was there. That would take a bit of time. I don't know if, doing some CPR was going to bring her back to life the way that they did, but, TV magic, because not only did Keelan actually survive being attacked, which basically happened around the time that Freya went down, but she went to Russo's and saw Josh, and then they have to go to Josh's place, which, if I remember from when Marcel first got that's outside of the city. I mean, maybe he picked her up and they ran at super speed, but I don't think so, because Josh wasn't even in the scene when Keelan actually first showed up. So I was like, I don't know if that really makes a lot of sense. I don't think your heart can be stopped for that long, and then someone just comes along and does CPR. But I don't know exactly the span of the city. I still don't think it's that close to where Keelan could go from where she was to the bar and then to Josh's place. And I'm like, I just feel like that was a little too far, but in the end, it doesn't matter because Freya lived. Because I was like, especially with the way they ended it, and of course the spell actually falling apart, her heart would have to have been stopped for the spell to break. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure she's gone, which is an insane way to do it, where, she freaks out and pushes him out of the circle, and then he kills her in this moment where she's realizing her feelings for Keelan, but she doesn't get to ever have that moment. So I was glad that ultimately things ended up working out where she didn't end up dying. And so, of course, she goes back to the house, and she tries to, find her family. And things just get really crazy because she freaks out at Keelan, like, you're kind of in the way and stuff. And it's because she's now, just like, that's kind of the crux of the series, is that people care for other people, and those other people become, leverage. So, of course, that ends up happening for Freya. She's never really had that outside of her family. And for the most part, they were able to take care of themselves outside of, like, the last season when Marcel, was kind of able to up things. But I thought it was really well done. I was like, I like the way it played out. It was kind of the typical thing. It was like, I care about you, so I gotta push you away because, you can be used as leverage or, stuff like that. But still, it was fine. And ultimately, it ends up working out in the end. They kiss, they make up, and so now they're going to end up being a couple. I'm curious to see how that does play out in the future of the season, with them having other villains, and how long Keelan does end up staying around, and just how all this stuff is going to play out, because now it seems like the Hollow itself is coming out as the main villain, because they killed off, the witch. He's dead now, and the woman that was looking for Marcel, she got stabbed with the bone early on in the episode, and then the Hollow actually takes the bone out and then controls her body, which I thought was actually very cool. So we still get a glimpse of the manifestation of the Hollow, which I feel like, considering what they showed us, I assume that they actually have someone chosen. I mean, it was just a random girl with, like, long hair, so we couldn't really get, like, a full detailed look at the face. And it sounded like Davina to me, which I thought was the weird thing, because I was like, well, is this going to be, like, it's using Davina, or it's actually Davina, like, taking control, and she was, even in the afterlife, she's being controlled by some sort of dark magic. But it wasn't her. It really sounded a lot like her to me. I was like, it's so weird. It sounds like Davina, but it's a different person. But it was someone that had long hair, so I don't know if that's going to end up being the actual actress that they use when the Hollow eventually, like, I'm just assuming, considering what they've shown us, they got the tattoo and everything, this person is going to come to life and have their own body. So, for maybe the next couple of episodes, we'll see this vampire being taken over, but the Hollow's going to have its full resurrection a little bit later. They also get another clue as to where to go, and that's from the Appeasy thing. We find out that the Appeasy basically links to a werewolf clan that ultimately leads to the Lockwoods, and I thought that was a great reference. We get to see Tyler Lockwood, who of course was sadly killed in the Vampire Diaries, but that was cool. They reference Mystic Falls. We see in the promo that aside from Davina coming into play, We also get to see Alaric, so that I thought was awesome. He's my favorite character from the originals, or from the Vampire Diaries. So super awesome to see him. He's just my favorite character out of like everybody. He's like, I swear he's had to have died more than anybody else on screen. Like he's died. That's like that was almost his character arc. That literally was a character arc for him, where he died so much he turned evil. So that man is like the immortal human. He might even die in the next episode and still come back to life. So we'll see what happens there. But it was really awesome. I was like, sweet, Alaric's going to be in it. Maybe we'll see some other characters. Who knows? But I love the way they did it for sure. So I'm excited for the next episode. Vincent, he's been getting a lot of good stuff in this season. And he had a great part in this episode where Elijah goes to him and is like, all right, well, let's get the ancestors involved. Like, if that's what we need their power to take on this ancient power. Let's do it. Let's basically do another harvest ritual. Get 4 girls, do the ritual, get them to come back to life, have their power, and use it against the Hollow. And Vincent's like, we're not doing that. I'm not sacrificing 4 random girls to help you. Like, I don't really like you, but I do want to stop the Hollow, but I'm not going to do something like that. And of course, Elijah does what he wants. He's kind of going on his rampage compared to Klaus, of course. So he kills the 4 girls. He forces Vincent to do it. Well, I won't say he technically forced him, but it was basically like, this is all we got, so figure it out. And he does, which I thought was awesome because Elijah mentions some pretty awesome stuff. It was like, you were the regent for all the covens. Even my mother knew that you were super powerful, and the Hollow itself chose you. I was like, man, when you put it in perspective like that, outside of it being, spanned out over, this entire series, when you just say it like that, it's like, he does have some interesting powers going on. Like, he is chosen for a lot of interesting stuff. And I kind of liked when Elijah kind of just rattled it off. I was like, yeah, I never really thought about that. It was always like one little bit at a time, but he's definitely done some interesting stuff throughout the series. So thought it was really cool that Elijah kind of gave him a not so peppy pep talk, and of course Vincent's able to do it a little bit with Davina's help. So that led to some really great stuff where they kind of reference that Davina is still there on the other side. Vincent is able to bring back the girls, which is great with of course with Davina's help. So I love what they did with Vincent in this episode, where he's like freaking out that Elijah did it and he's worried that it's not going to work. And it's like, of course, the ancients hate me and they hate you, so this can't happen. But he's kind of quick on his feet, and he's able to use Davina to do it. And I just love that. He was like, I haven't called out to you for a couple of years, but that's because I never thought you could hear me, but I do think you can hear me now. So I just love the way that whole scene played out, and he's able to ultimately make it work. And then when he talks with Josh, it's like, yeah, I felt her, and she's here helping us out again. And that was just like, she's pretty much the only reason that we're able to move on to the next step. It's Davina. So I thought that was actually a pretty good scene as well. But did some good stuff with all the characters. Marcel and Hope, I definitely enjoyed that. I'm curious to see how that might actually expand in future episodes, because I really enjoyed it. It was simple in this episode. I love the part where he was like, maybe you can get me some blood from your dad's stash. And she's like, I'm 7, not stupid. That was a great line. It was just really funny, but it was good. It was really good. And then, of course, that leads to, kind of a nice little reunion with Marcel and Klaus, where we find out that the line Marcel gave to Hope, where it was like, close your eyes and sing, is the same thing that Klaus used to say to Marcel. So I was like, man, they're doing some really good stuff, kind of mending their really, really crazy relationship. So I love the way that all played out in this episode. Action was pretty decent too. We didn't really see a ton of crazy action. I think the most action we really got to see was actually from Freya when she had the guy trapped, and she was just like, sending him into cardiac arrest and like twisting him and pushing him and stuff. But it was still interesting. We see kind of the remains of a lot of different battles. We know, like I said, I really wish we got to see it, but we know that Keelan killed off like 10 freaking vampires on her own, which I still find super sweet. I just wish we got to see it. But really enjoyed this episode. Excited that they're already doing kind of the link in with the Vampire Diaries. I didn't expect them to do it so early, but like I said, we already have Alaric coming in. They're already headed towards Mystic Falls to get the bones from somewhere. So it's like, the bones are in Mystic Falls, but, they're like, who knows? Like, they need a million other leads outside of that. Like, they know that it was attached to Tyler, but that just leads them to the city, not much else. So I'm like, I don't really know what other clues they can get just from heading there. But I'm sure they'll find something, because it's, it's TV. And maybe that's how Alaric comes into play anyway, with the armory and stuff like that. And, that gives them a couple of answers there. So looking forward to the next episode. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this one. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I actually want to know what you guys think about them mending the relationship between Klaus and Marcel by the end of this episode. Because, personally speaking, I'm surprised it happened so early on. I figured it would, but I was like, it's going to have to be a lot more chaos. The girl, the woman's going to end up rescuing Marcel. They're going to go off and be like their own faction for a little bit. And then eventually the Hollow will get super crazy. And it's like, all right, I already escaped a long time ago. We'll let that pass. And now we can team up. And in this, it was like, nope. Marcel escaped because of Hope. He helped her. And then just one little line ultimately helped him and Klaus actually get back together. And also the fact that Hope was like, don't be mad, he's my friend. That pretty much gets you a free pass in life. Once Klaus's daughter says, like, I like this person, I think Klaus is going to kind of let you slide in life to help, keep things normal for his daughter. So I like the way they did the relationship. I thought it was very interesting. And the way they did it where we get bits of how they feel even in that moment, because they're having conversations with other characters, and then they finally have a conversation with each other by the end. And I personally love the way it played out, and it made a lot of sense. It wasn't like, I didn't feel like it was a contrived thing where it's just like, all right, let's get back together. I never thought that was an issue with this show. I always feel like even the Vampire Diaries in this have always done a really good job with making people just go in this crazy cycle of friend and enemy over and over throughout I think it was 8 seasons, for the Vampire Diaries, and it always made sense. So I was never worried about it, but it certainly didn't happen in the way I expected, and I really loved it. But I'd love to know how you guys felt about their relationship mending by the end of this episode. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.